Between 2003 and 2009, improvised explosive devices accounted for nearly 2/3 of all American combat deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan. The vehicle absorbing most of those blasts, the Humvee, was a rear area utility truck from the 1980s, never built for frontline combat. So Congress poured over $1 billion into armoring it. The decision seemed beyond argument. But what happens when you fix a problem without understanding the system you are fixing? The Humvee's engineering envelope was never meant to carry the burden it would soon be forced to bear. The original M998 rolled out with a curb weight of 5,200 pounds and a gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR, of 7,700 pounds. This margin, a 2,500-pound payload window, was carefully calculated for 4 troops, their gear, and a few mission-specific add-ons. The suspension, brakes, and steering geometry were all tuned to this limit. Every technical manual, every depot checklist, every maintenance log reinforced the same ceiling. Exceed it, and the vehicle's dynamics were no longer predictable. Then came the up-armor kits. Official Army spec sheets detail the additions: steel-plated doors, a reinforced floor, ballistic glass, and turret armor. The combined mass, at least 1,200 pounds, was not theoretical. It was measured, crated, and bolted onto every Humvee that rolled off the retrofitting line. The curb weight now jumped to over 6,400 pounds before a single soldier stepped inside. With a full crew and combat load, the M114 routinely tipped the scales at 8,500 pounds or more, nearly 10% over the maximum GVWR, with no redesign of the axles or brakes. The added weight changed everything. What had once been a nimble, all-terrain platform became a vehicle operating far outside its original design envelope. The Army's own technical bulletins warned that exceeding GVWR would degrade handling, stress the suspension, and raise the center of gravity. But under congressional mandate, the numbers were ignored. The up-armored Humvee was now a rolling contradiction, a system engineered for lightness forced into the weight class of a small armored car. The open question: how would that lost margin play out in the chaos of real-world maneuvers? Welders sparked through the night on forward operating bases, scavenging steel from bombed-out Iraqi workshops, bolting scrap to Humvees with whatever hardware could be found. The name Hillbilly Armor became a quiet badge of desperation, protection measured not in millimeters of ballistic steel, but in the weight of hope and improvisation. Field modification logs from 2004 record makeshift armor kits adding anywhere from 600 to 900 pounds per vehicle, each pound a wager against the next roadside bomb. One armorer quoted in an Army oral history put it bluntly, "We welded on whatever we could get our hands on. The extra plates saved lives until the vehicle started handling like a brick." The bureaucratic machinery lagged behind the battlefield. Official armor kits remained bottlenecked in procurement, while soldiers risked their lives in vehicles never meant to bear the added mass. The disconnect burst into public view in March 2005, when Specialist Thomas Wilson, standing in front of Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld, asked why his unit was forced to scavenge junkyards for armor. Wilson's words cut through the layers of official reassurance. "We are being told to drive a tank in a Humvee. It flips on the slightest bump. This isn't protection. It's a death trap." Rumsfeld's answer: "We are doing everything we can to get you safer. The armor is necessary," landed with the weight of institutional inevitability. The confrontation ricocheted through Congress and the Pentagon, triggering emergency funding and a race to up-armor every Humvee in theater. But as the kits arrived and the weight piled on, a new unspoken risk grew heavier by the day. The question lingered, unaddressed. What if the armor meant to save lives was quietly rewriting the odds of survival in a different, deadlier way? The Army's own engineering models, buried in tar deck archives, chart the physics that turned routine driving into a calculated risk. With each slab of steel and layer of ballistic glass, the Humvee's center of gravity crept upward by 4.5 inches on average. The metric sounds trivial on paper, but in vehicle dynamics, inches are destiny. The up-armored M114 now carried its mass higher and farther forward than any baseline test had anticipated. On a side slope or during a sudden swerve, this shift translated directly into a loss of margin, a narrowing band between control and catastrophe. Internal brake tests, rarely circulated outside the acquisition office, documented what the field already suspected. Stopping distances increased by 10 to 15%, even on dry pavement. The brakes, sized for a 7,700-pound vehicle, now struggled to shed the kinetic energy of an 8,500-pound machine. Under combat load, a Humvee that once halted in 85 feet at 30 miles per hour now demanded over 100 feet. In the chaos of a convoy, that extra length was measured in lives. Stability data told a parallel story. The original Humvee could withstand lateral acceleration up to 0.45 g before tipping, enough to survive sharp turns or evasive maneuvers. The up-armored variant's threshold dropped to 0.35 g. That 22% reduction meant a pothole, a curb, or a sudden steering correction could push the vehicle past the point of no return. Each added pound of armor was a silent recalibration of risk, one that no procurement memo or congressional hearing would ever acknowledge in real time. The center of gravity had become the invisible axis around which the paradox spun, setting the stage for the next, deadlier variable. The turret was always the Humvee's defining silhouette, a ring of steel, a soldier standing exposed, a weapon braced against the skyline. In the up-armored era, the turret became something else, a loaded gun pointed at the laws of physics. The Remote Weapon Station, RWS, added 350 pounds of concentrated mass at the vehicle's highest point. Every pound elevated the center of gravity, narrowing the margin between control and catastrophe. Laboratory models flagged the risk, but in the field, the evidence was written in casualty logs and accident summaries. Army Safety Center data traced 1.5 times greater rollover probability in vehicles fitted with turret kits, especially during high-speed turns or on sloped ground. The heavier the turret, the more the Humvee fought its own momentum. This was not just a combat problem. Training grounds across the United States became silent test beds for the paradox. Between 2006 and 2009, 12 soldiers died in rollover accidents during routine convoy exercises, each incident logged by the Army's Training and Doctrine Command as a direct result of lost stability. These were not hostile deaths. No enemy in sight, no IED on the road. Just a vehicle pushed past its limits, a turret acting as a lever, and the immutable pull of gravity. The internal tally grew, each fatality a data point in a system that refused to acknowledge the true cost of its own solution. The numbers weighted in the margins of official reports, an emerging ledger of lives lost to the physics of protection. The Army Safety Center's internal tables, rarely referenced in public hearings, record a transformation in the accident ledger that few outside the procurement chain ever saw. Before the up-armored kits, rollovers made up just 4% of all Humvee accidents. After the armor surge, that share jumped to 23%, a six-fold increase not explained by enemy action or terrain alone. Each of these incidents carried a grim multiplier, 1.8 deaths per rollover, double the lethality rate of other vehicle accidents. Nearly 1 in 5 of these fatalities occurred far from the battlefield, on training grounds, convoy routes, or motor pools where no hostile fire was present. In the institutional arithmetic of Pentagon briefings, these were classified as non-hostile losses, numbers that rarely reached the congressional floor. But in the raw calculus of risk, every armored Humvee that rolled was as likely to kill its crew as to save it. The official ledger closed with no asterisk, no warning, only a rising curve that demanded explanation. In June 2014, as Iraqi army units abandoned their posts in Mosul, a new ledger of loss was quietly written. Intelligence assessments counted at least 180 up-armored M1114 Humvees captured intact by ISIS. These were vehicles once procured at congressional insistence, now repainted and repurposed as weapons of terror. Internal charts from the Army's Security Assistance Program track the chain of custody, from United States assembly lines to Iraqi security forces to the streets of Mosul under black flags. The irony is clinical, not poetic. Armor designed to shield American lives now armored the enemy. These vehicles, built under the logic of urgent procurement, became rolling trophies for ISIS, their steel hulls converted into suicide bombs and mobile gun platforms. The cost was not just measured in dollars or in American lives, but in the global diffusion of the very risk the program was meant to contain. The paradox had metastasized. The institution's logic still lingers. Armor as a reflex, risk as a ledger entry. Even today, procurement cycles outpace field realities, and design trade-offs get buried in classified appendices. The real paradox isn't metal versus blast. It's how systems built to protect can quietly turn into the next uncounted threat.